There were 11 pieces of equipment in the garage of the unit. After shelling by Russian Iskander, it was completely damaged. Literally 10 seconds later, the first explosion rang out. The ceiling, plaster fell. I heard shouts, "We've been overwhelmed, help!" After the second explosion, I was knocked off my feet. I felt a burning pain in my neck. There is such a profession to save people. Those who chose it understand that it is associated with a risk to life. Yes, firefighters sometimes die. They die, saving the lives of people who were caught hostage by the fiery element. But when a rescuer dies at the hands of a bandit, it is a double crime. Chief of Civil Defense Kostiantin Malyarov was killed while going out to the fire from repeated shelling of his crew by rashists. Konstantin died. He left behind a wife and 2 children. He died young. He was 39 years old. At the beginning of the war, starting on February 24th, the enemy launched artillery, mortar and rocket attacks on residential areas of Kharkiv and the region, destroying critical infrastructure facilities and buildings of the residential sector. When this happens, people can only hope for the rescue service, and people's lives depend on how quickly rescuers reach the place and provide help. But the enemy is trying to kill even the hope for salvation by striking directly at the firefighters. The units of the State Fire and Rescue Service, both in the city of Kharkiv and in the region, were repeatedly hit by rocket and artillery strikes. In the spring of 2022, Kharkiv firefighters worked under intense pressure. Constant shelling by Russian artillery and rockets, the need to eliminate their consequences and rescue citizens at the landing sites have become a daily job for rescuers. Now, even directly, fire departments have become a target for Russian terrorists. The 27th unit of the State Fire and Rescue Service of Ukraine was attacked by the rashists in May 2022. In 2022, the workload was huge, 20 departures per day. On May 18th, the Russian Federation launched an attack on Unit Number 27 of the State Fire and Rescue Service. The next guard was in place, the guard service and dispatchers were in their places. There was an explosion. During the explosion, a fire truck and a private house caught fire. There were 101 windows smashed, 5 gates, and the interior decoration of the premises were broken in the subdivision building. Fortunately, none of the residents were in the household, which was also damaged during the shelling, so no one was hurt. This is the communication point of the part. It was crushed on impact. Fortunately, none of the dispatchers were injured, perhaps because the fire engine took the brunt of it. A radio operator was at the communication point at the time of the attack. The girl, despite such horror, reacted steadfastly, conducted telephone conversations with the services that helped us in liquidating the consequences. The Russian armed forces deliberately launched a missile attack because there was maximum damage to the building and equipment. Why do they do this? Most likely to continue their terror. State Fire and Rescue Service is not a military organization at all. We are only in the business of protecting people. We never had military. Therefore, I believe that what the Russian Federation did with this attack is a continuation of terrorist acts. I believe that they are doing this in order to reduce the aid from us to ordinary civilians.
Таких випадків, коли росіяни наносили як ракетні, так і артилерійські.
At least 100 such cases, when the Russians launched rocket and artillery strikes at places where rescuers were working, were recorded. One such case occurred in the Devoid village when the employees of the State Fire and Rescue Service were working on a destroyed administrative building. There it was necessary to get the bodies of dead women from under the rubble. The Russians fired artillery and mortar strikes at the very place where the rescuers were working, completely destroying all the fire rescue equipment. Fortunately, the staff was not injured. And the last case happened in October 2023, when Russian troops launched 2 missile strikes directly at the fire and rescue unit of the Izium city. One rocket hit the facade, destroying part of the building. All the partitions in the room were completely knocked out, the furniture was destroyed, and all the service rooms and the garage of the fire and rescue depot were damaged. All the available equipment that was there was destroyed. That can be stated that the enemy insidiously attacks the fire and rescue units. The Russians strike directly both at the places where the rescuers work and at the places where they are stationed.
26 жовтня російська армія.
In October 26th, the Russian army again bombarded our native city of Izium with Iskander-type missiles. There were 2 of them. One hit directly in front of our unit, literally 10 meters away. The funnel was formed with a diameter of probably 12 meters. There was a large gap, about 2.5 m deep.
Діаметрі, напевно, метрів 12. Велика вирва була і глибока, десь 2,5 метра глибоко. З перших 2 воріт не залишилося...
Of the first 2 gates remained not even a trace, and our gates were metal, more than 4 meters high.
4,20 заввишки. Після удару росіян.
After the Russian attack, all the partitions in our building collapsed. It has already been rebuilt. All the windows were blown out. All furniture, office equipment, everything failed. We were helped by volunteers, friends, and comrades from other units. They provided us with laptops so that we had something to work on. This is not a military facility, it is not a military unit. There are no military personnel here at all. This is the fire and rescue department, and shelling was, I think, because they wanted to destroy this building. Humanitarian goods were brought to us. People also received potatoes here. We unloaded 5 truckloads a day after the deoccupation. Therefore, it was a center for providing human needs in a way. I think it was a targeted attack on the fire station.
6 одиниць техніки ми направили.
We sent 6 units of equipment for repair because it was unfit to perform operational tasks. 18 personnel were on daily duty. There were 6 wounded.
Найбільш постраждали було 6 поранених.
23:30 пролунався.
At 11:30 p.m., the alarm signal sounded, and literally 10 seconds later, the first explosion rang out. I grabbed my phone and ran on the glass. That is, after the first strike by the Russian Iskander, which was a little further from the unit, there were already a lot of glass fragments. Some elements of the door and windows were already damaged, and I thought that there will be another blow. And so it happened. Literally 10 seconds later, a second strike occurred, literally 20 meters from the fire station, knocking me off my feet. The ceiling and plaster fell down. We had a unit communications point room. The dispatcher and squad leader were there. I heard shouts from there. "We are overwhelmed, help." The door faced the intersection diagonally. With the help of the squad leader, they were pushed away. I removed the dispatcher from there. The squad leader was also wounded. I'm sure it was a targeted rocket attack on our fire department. Because there is only the housing sector here, there are no industrial facilities at all. In general, there are no objects that could be. There is no military equipment, no soldiers, only rescuers, us. Who helped people and committed such a terrorist act against us by Russian Iskanders? I'm very sorry for this.
Після прильоту російського Іскандеру
After the strike by the Russian Iskander, at that time we had 11 special vehicles in the garage of the fire department. All of them were damaged. They are all still under repair until they are restored.
Ну, ще вони всі знаходяться на ремонті, поки вони не встановлені.
Lost equipment and crushed buildings are, of course, losses. And who can estimate the damage to life and health caused by Russian terrorists to Ukrainian citizens and their rescuers?
Був другий зрив на фасаді.
After the second explosion, I was knocked off my feet.
Було в мене таке.
I fell to the ground and felt a searing pain in my neck. I went out and said, "Guys, look, something is sticking out of my neck."
Вийшов, кажу, хлопці, гляньте, що в мене.
When they looked, they said that I had a shrapnel wound.
Коли вони глянули, що каже, це там влучання.
Doctors arrived, provided first aid, and during the examination, they also discovered a shrapnel wound in the hip. I was treated for a month because I had a severe wound on my leg. The suppuration did not heal. After I returned to the formation again,
Після став до строю.
hero firefighters, despite wounds and injuries, continue to perform their difficult but necessary work for citizens. To save. Unfortunately, in conditions where the Russians are purposefully firing at the rescuers, it is almost impossible to avoid fatal hits.
17 травня 2020
On May 17th, 2022,
загинув наш
our comrade in arms, Kostiantin Malyarov, died.
під час виконання служби
While performing official duties, they came under enemy Russian fire.
ворожий російський обстріл.
On the way, there was repeated shelling, and he was wounded, as it turned out, fatally.
Його поранили.
He was wounded in the chest and could not be saved. Konstantin died.
Костянтин загинув.
He left behind a wife and 2 children.
Та двоє дітей.
He died young. He was 39 years old.
Неодноразово ворог завдавав обстрілів і по місцям, де працювали.
The enemy repeatedly shelled the places where the rescuers were working,
Шкоди не тільки по життю
causing
людей,
damage not only to the fire equipment, but also to the life and health of the rescuers themselves.
зафіксовано 4 випадки.
Since the beginning of the war, we have already recorded 4 cases of the death of rescuers at the place of the strike when the enemy fired repeatedly. 35 rescuers also were injured. In total, 41 damage to fire department buildings was recorded. 68 fire rescue vehicles and other special equipment were seriously damaged, and some were completely destroyed.
Деякі взагалі були знищені.
The terrible consequences of Russian aggression must be compensated, and the terrorist country must be responsible for crimes committed. Unfortunately, it is impossible to return the lives of rescuers who died conscientiously performing their duty.